tax and penalty free. Pick up your phone now and dial 855-910-9047. Representatives are standing by to assist you. Call 855-910-9047.
8:37 in our Team Hochberg Traffic Center, Jim Talamonte.
In Naperville, crews are working to restore power along southbound Washington from 75th to Bailey. Expect lane restrictions there. On the inbound side of the Kennedy Expressway, delays start right around 190. It's 37 minutes O'Hare to downtown, 22 from Montrose, 17 in the Express, outbound 30 minutes downtown to the airport. The Eisenhower has improved. It's 49 minutes, 390 to downtown, 34 from Wolf, outbound 34 minutes to 390. Stevenson, 52 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan, 25 minutes, 95th to downtown, outbound 17. Major crash investigation cleared at 63rd. Northbound Lakeshore Drive is heavy, 17 minutes from Marquette to Monroe. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. A pleasant day ahead, mostly sunny and 75. Currently 59 degrees. Your next news update is at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, this is interesting. Another network affiliate reporter, a meteorologist, broke bad on her television overlords. April Moss, she's a meteorologist in Detroit.
Yeah, it's CBS Channel 56, I do recall.
I think it's Channel 62, but okay.
Oh, yeah. One of those.
You remember so well.
Well, no, I used to work at the CBS, but then it was bought out by Fox, so they moved way up the dial.
This is after last week, a Fox 26 reporter in Houston, Ivory Hecker, broke bad on her employer, too. Just while she was doing the weather, April Moss said, I'm sitting down with Project Veritas to discuss the discrimination that CBS is enforcing upon its employees. She hasn't been fired yet, but she's probably going to be in short order. And then she recorded this conversation that she had, and O'Keefe at Project Veritas posted it. Listen to this exchange between her and Chief Engineer Chuck Davis at the station.
I understand if CBS decides to let me go. I do understand that.
Why would you do that? Basically, that's the most selfish thing I've ever seen in 36 years working there, without even a close second. Because you don't give a crap about anybody else, and like if you get terminated, which you might, and then the burden is going to place on other people, you couldn't care less. It's just all about April Moss.
Well, that's
very, very unfortunate. I know we've had some talks and, and all of that, but I didn't know that you were that kind of person.
I'm not that kind of person.
You
Chuck.
are, April. You are. You're all about April, and that's it. I'm April, and here's my stance. Regardless of the burden this is going to put on anybody else.
Well, I've tried to go through all of the direct channels that...
What do you think going on the air and getting fired is going to do? Do you think that's going to change their rules?
Well, it's not just CBS, but it's a lot of organizations and corporations across the country that are enforcing unfair standards on people.
I can't believe you did that. I just can't believe it. We had some chats offline and, and some texts, but to go on the air and just blatantly disregard any protocols, and again, place all of this burden on other people, I'm going to recommend that you get terminated.
Chuck, why would you recommend I get terminated if it's placing such a burden on everybody else if I leave?
What do you mean, like staffing? Why, like filling the void while she's gone? Excuse me.
standing up for yourself. Just places undue. You getting fired places undue burden on me. That's what's selfish. You're just supposed to go along with whatever is current inside the workplace. And if you want to be the nail that sticks up, then not only are you going to get fired, you're going to be called selfish for doing so. Fascinating times in the news business, as it were. For more on this, somebody else in the news business. Christian Toto is the editor of HollywoodInToto, TOTO.com. He's also a reporter for RealClearInvestigations.com. Christian, I know we want to talk about kids' TV for a second, but I just couldn't help, since this is the second such incident in about a week. What's happening at the network affiliate level? Some of the inmates are getting a little restless.
Yeah, it's a fascinating exchange, and that person doesn't quite describe the burden being placed on him. And it certainly seems like the least selfish thing you could do is to kind of blow the whistle and likely lose your job, if not your career. So, but listen, there are people who like the status quo, and they're upset about what's going on. And what Project Veritas is doing is exposing some stuff that should be exposed, and bravo to them.
Yeah, and boy, it's just you just got to feel for Chuck Davis, though, that engineer at that affiliate in Detroit. Been there for 36 years. He's just trying to low cum it, and then April Moss, this uppity weather chick, starts to think for herself, and now he's got a real headache on his hands.
I don't think they're going to be talking ever again.
I just love the attitude. By the way, remember, that's the attitude from a woke newsroom. That's all about, women empowerment and this and that and identitarian. And then it just becomes, boy, you're really a pain in my ass, and I wish you would just go along with the program.
Yeah, some of these recorded audio and video snippets are really fascinating. And I think what we're seeing bubble up, and we need more of it, is sort of more truth, more honesty. And I think too many facets of the news business today don't align with that worldview. It sounds scary to say. It should be their bread and butter, but often it's not.
Well, you wrote an article about a PBS station that featured Little Miss Hot Mess. What exactly is that?
It's a drag performer, but the bigger picture here is that a lot of kids programming, and this is not just for teens and preteens, but really younger kids, between 3 and 8, it's getting sexualized in a way. And I think for years we watched Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street, and they taught us empathy, and I think that's generally a wonderful thing. But I think what we're seeing now is sort of concepts that are pretty complicated. I mean, sometimes they're complicated for adults about, non-binary people and trans issues. And you're seeing this brought into children's programming. And there are people who cheer this on, and there are people who, even if they do cheer it on, think, well, golly, my kid's like 4. He or she can't really process this. So that's what's going on in children's entertainment at the moment.
Blue's Clues is an example you provide. We played it the other week when it posted. Here's a little snippet for our listeners.
Hey, Blue, look at all these families. Hi, families. It's time for a pride parade. Families marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. This family has 2 mommies. They love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade. Families marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. This family has 2 daddies. They love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade. Come on, friends. Families marching 3 by 3, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching 3 by 3, hurrah, hurrah. These Babas are non-binary. They love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade.
And that goes up to 10 different iterations from Nina West in that Blue's Clues.
Including thruples.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, after 4 or 5, you're going to have to get into, how members of Congress live.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Christian, I mean, right, non-binary thruples and so on and so forth. And obviously Blue's Clues is targeted at, primary grade audience.
Yeah, look, my kids are 10 and 12, and I've watched them grow, and I've seen what they can process and what they can't process. And, of course, now they're a little older, a little wiser, and they're still getting wiser, obviously. Kids aren't ready for certain concepts. And another thing that's going on is that I think there's a lack of transparency here. You're just kind of, this stuff is foisted upon us. You think, I'm not going to let my kids watch Stranger Things because that's, R-rated style content. But I can let my kids watch Blue's Clues because it's squeaky clean. But then all of a sudden you get this. And again, I think empathy is important. I have no problem with people if they choose to live their lives in a certain fashion. That's fine. But I'm an adult, and kids aren't, and they're not ready for this information. So it isn't just one or two shows or 3 or 4 shows. I mean, I document quite a few different examples in the story, but I left out a ton, and it seems to be growing and growing.
Well, and the other thing is this runs in perfect synchronicity with what's going on in K through 12 education in terms of like sex ed curriculum. We've seen it here in Illinois, where you're getting down in the primary grades. Number one, you're doing graphic sex education in the primary grades, and number two, you're attempting to normalize, legitimize the same things that you heard singing about in Blue's Clues, and so you have that happening at the schools, and then they come home and they turn on one of the streaming services or television, and then they're getting the same thing there too for reinforcement.
Yeah, and listen, this happens in adult programming. If you watch most broadcast TV shows, there will be sloganeering about BLM, about open borders. It's, today's screenwriters, whether they're writing for kids or adults, are very invested in sending messages. And it's, I think often entertainment can be very helpful that way, or at least it can enrich a story when there's sort of a deeper context involved. But often what we see is this sort of, the story stops cold and you get a lecture. And I think that doesn't work at all for adult programming, because we want to have a good story. We want to get lost in the characters and the situations and not, have a finger wagged at us. But it seems there's a different level here when you're talking about kids programming.
Well, besides turning it off, what else can parents do?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the power of the pocketbook or the wallet certainly matters if you don't support these endeavors. But, one thing I've noticed in Hollywood, especially more geared for adults, is that I don't think that works, because I think that certain industries and studios and screenwriters, they want that message out into the marketplace of ideas. And if they fail, or if they don't make as much money as other programs or movies, I don't think they care as much, because I don't see it stopping. There are a lot of woke movies that are unsuccessful, and most recently In the Heights is in that category. But I don't get the sense that the industry is going to stop making them. I think that they make money off of X and Y franchises, and then they kind of said, well, we're going to also spend some time with this. And even if they're not commercially successful, we'll get it out there. And it'll live on streaming, on platforms, on cable. And that's what we want into this marketplace.
And it's funny, too. We were just talking about critical race theory before you joined us, and this effort by the left to suggest this is just some sort of esoteric theory that's mainly kicked around in the halls of academia. The idea it's being taught in K through 12 education is not true. And yet, as you profile here, Ibram Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, is coming out in conjunction with Netflix with an animated series, Anti-Racist Baby. But it's just that this is too big a theory for anybody in K through 12 to understand it. It's only college level, and yet we have a cartoon that seeks to advance that very theory.
Yeah, one point I want to mention from my story is that I reached out to a lot of different outlets. Netflix, Hulu, Sesame, it's a workshop, I think it's called. It's sort of the group behind Sesame Street, a great show for decades. And I wanted to ask them about this, about sort of putting this kind of information into their programming, ways to do it. Are there sort of guidelines? Do they have advisory boards? Just sort of put it in more context. And no one answered me. And I thought that was interesting because, if they are proud of this and if they do think it's helpful to society, and they may honestly, authentically think that, then they should talk about it and share their research, share how this is helpful, share all the ways that they kind of shape this content. But no one was talking.
You know what else is interesting? I was playing golf with a guy recently, and he was telling me about a friend of his in Hollywood. So we're talking so much on the content side and what those in charge are doing. What about those who are in the industry and have had success in the industry and who's allowed to work anymore in the industry? It's very interesting. This guy is a middle-aged white guy who is also gay, and he's had some success. And he has done a couple of projects recently. I don't want to get too much into details because I don't want to, out his business. But projects that are high-profile projects that the studios loved, but we can't allow you to write from the perspective of a young black man. So we can't allow that to be a part of your character, the development of one of your characters, because that's not who you are. Another project, we can't allow you to write from the perspective of a middle-aged woman, because that's not who you are. I mean, this is a talented writer with a proven track record, and they like what he did, but his intersectional score is not high enough to qualify him to be attached to the project without, having to bring in, I guess, cover people so that he can attribute some of his work to other people so they fill all the identitarian boxes. I mean, that's where things are at.
This is a great point, and it's something that I've talked about a little bit, but it's not really being discussed in a bigger way. And I think it's a profound problem where we cannot kind of reach beyond our life experiences to tell different stories. For years, Woody Allen was known not for all his scandals, but because no one wrote better female characters than Woody Allen, and the greatest actresses would flock to his movies,
right? And
often they'd walk away with Oscars. S.E. Hinton, I believe, is a woman, and she wrote Outsiders, one of the kind of classic tales about teenage young men. We all need empathy. If we're writing outside of our group, we may think about a neighbor who happens to be black, or maybe think about our moms or grandmothers and the people in our lives to kind of help shape these stories. But from a creative perspective, if we start punishing people for writing outside of their life experiences, I think it's going to have a devastating impact on the arts. I really do. I think it's a terrible trend. And I think that the best artists will maybe do their research, maybe, investigate, talk to people outside of their life experiences if they want to get a cultural point right. It's certainly what artists do. It's what authors do all the time. But to say that this person can't write about a certain situation because they haven't lived it, it just seems as restrictive as anything I can imagine when it comes to the arts.
He is Christian Toto. He's the editor of HollywoodInToto.com. He's also a reporter for RealClearInvestigations.com. Check out his latest piece at RealClearInvestigations.com, which I'll tweet out. Left Foot In, Children's TV is doing the wokey pokey. Christian, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Have you ever gone to the grocery store hungry? Big mistake. Next thing you know, you're in your kitchen unloading all these extra items you don't need, saying, "What did I do?" That's kind of like someone who goes into retirement without an income plan. You file for Social Security too early, start pulling from your savings, and